And welcome to Stakelbeck on Terror. Well, President Obama just wrapped up a tour of the Middle East, which included his first visit as president to Israel. He met with Prime Minister Netanyahu, saw the sights, and of course, called for the establishment of a Palestinian state. The Palestinian people deserve a state, he said. Really? Why? What have the Palestinians done to deserve or earn a state other than unleash wave after wave of genocidal terrorism against Israel? First of all, the concept of a Palestinian people didn't even exist until the 1960s, when Yasser Arafat helped create one of history's greatest myths, that the Jewish people stormed ancient Palestine and forcibly evicted the defenseless Palestinians from a land that had been Arab from the dawn of time. It was even worse than the Holocaust. That's what pro-Palestinian rabble-rousers tell us. And the media and the so-called international community have swallowed the lie hook, line, and sinker. So is President Obama. Newsflash, Mr. President. I know that in your infamous Cairo speech in 2009, you basically suggested that the Jews were only in Israel today as a result of the Holocaust. I'm here to tell you that there has always been a Jewish presence in the land of Israel. Always. Even after the Romans destroyed the Second Temple in the year AD 70 and the majority of Jews were scattered to the ends of the earth, a Jewish remnant always remained in the land. By the 1880s, Jerusalem once again had a Jewish majority. Imagine that. Israel is the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people and has been for 4,000 years. Check the history books. Check the archaeological finds, and yes, check the Bible. 4,000 years. That's how long the Jews have been in the land of Israel. The Palestinians? Put it this way. Throughout history, can you name one, just one, Palestinian emperor or king or prime minister or explorer or a great Palestinian biblical figure? Maybe you're a Palestinian conqueror? Oh, I'm sorry. There are none, because there never was a Palestinian people in that land. Now, some Arabs did live there, absolutely, but there weren't a lot of them. And they never referred to themselves as Palestinians. As a matter of fact, before the Jews returned and resettled the land miraculously, Israel was pretty much a malaria-ridden wasteland, and not much of anyone lived there. Although there was that pesky Jewish presence, always. Now, once the Jews returned in large numbers around the turn of the 20th century and made the deserts bloom, like the Bible said they would, droves of Arabs from the surrounding countries magically showed up looking for work. The Jews kindly gave them work, and the Arabs stayed. More kept coming. All of this happened in the 20th century. It's a very recent phenomenon. The descendants of those Arabs today call themselves Palestinians. And by the way, Israel was only known as Palestine because the Roman Emperor Hadrian gave it that name in the 2nd century AD. Why did he give it that name? Well, in Latin, Palestine is translated Philistia, the Philistines. Remember them? The ancient biblical enemies of Israel? Hadrian renamed the land of Israel Palestine, or Philistia, on purpose, to insult the hated Jews and to blot out their memory, as if they never existed in that land. And that is what the so-called Palestinians would like to do to the Jews today. There you have it, Mr. President. You know, during Obama's stay in Israel, he encouraged an audience of Israeli students to put themselves in the Palestinian shoes. Well, maybe next time the president could ask the Palestinians to put themselves in the shoes of an Israeli mother who lost her son to a Palestinian suicide bomber in Jerusalem, or a father in Sderot who lost his daughter to a Palestinian rocket barrage. Or maybe he could have asked poor, occupied, downtrodden Palestinians to put themselves in the shoes of Adva Batan. She's a 2-year-old Israeli girl who's currently in critical condition after she and her family were brutally attacked by a mob of rock-throwing Palestinians. It seems little Adva was guilty of being a Jew in the Jewish biblical heartland of Samaria. Funny, President Obama didn't mention Adva during his trip to Israel. He also didn't mention a recent threat by Iran's supreme leader to destroy the Israeli cities of Tel Aviv and Haifa, or Iran's threats to attack America. I recently talked to my friend Reza Khalili about that. He's a former member of Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps who worked as a double agent for the CIA inside the Iranian regime. Reza has great sources on the ground inside Iran who tell him that America, the great Satan, has an Iranian regime bullseye on its back.
After the 2006 Hezbollah-Israeli war, one of the commanders of Revolutionary Guards in the inner circle of the force mentioned in Iran that after then they started increasing the forces in the U.S. for the ultimate confrontation. The calculation has always been that they will drag on the nuclear talks for as long as they can, and that if by any chance the U.S. should lose patience or support Israel in an attack or gets involved in an attack, then there would be forces present and established within the homeland in America to conduct terrorist activities.
Well, Dr. Matthew Levitt is a top expert on Iran and its proxy Hezbollah's war on America. Dr. Levitt is based at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and his new book is called Hezbollah, the Global Footprint of Lebanon's Party of God. I sat down with him recently to talk Hezbollah, Iran, and what's coming. Take a look. Well, Dr. Levitt, you've talked about a 2010 strategic decision between Hezbollah and Iran. Tell us about that decision and how that had ramifications for the West and for America in specific.
Hezbollah had already been trying to carry out an attack against the Israelis to avenge the death of Imam Abu Ghnia, their arch terrorist, who was killed in February 2008, and who they blamed the Israeli for that. But they kept failing. In Azerbaijan they failed, in Egypt they failed, and then in Turkey in September 2009 they failed again, even though Iran provided them much more logistical support. And so you now have Hezbollah and Iran, who are quite close, fighting, yelling at each other, whose fault is it? It's your fault, it's your fault.
And these were embarrassments for the Iranian regime?
Tremendously embarrassing, because Hezbollah is their long arm. Right. Meanwhile, this shadow war between Iran and the West is picking up pace, with viruses, Stuxnet, for example, being inserted into the Iranian nuclear program, IRGC defections from Iran, and then the straw that broke the Iranian camel's back, the assassination of key scientists in their nuclear program with these sticky bombs. And in January 2010, Dr. Mohammadi, one of the key scientists, is killed, and the Iranians now decide that's it. They decide to make clear to Israel and the West that there's a consequence to this, to try and deter people from doing these types of things now and from even considering targeting their nuclear program later. And so they come up with a three-part plan. Hezbollah is going to reinvigorate its terrorist wing, which had really rusted on the vine.
Why is that? Why did they kind of flounder? After 9/11?
After 9/11, Hezbollah decided it would not be caught in the crosshairs of the war on terrorism, and it literally pulled back some of its key people and invested almost all of its resources in its militia. Throughout this period, Iran is helping them tremendously, but it's almost all going towards the militia, which is larger than the Lebanese armed forces as a trained, standing army. Now you have today a situation where senior U.S. government officials say that on a given day, of the top three things that are being briefed to the president and others in the counterterrorism realm, at least one, sometimes two, or even three, are not just the Sunni al-Qaeda type of terrorism, but the Shia Iran Hezbollah type of terrorism as well.
Wow, and that is a major development to see Iran and Hezbollah move so far up the ladder. Do they have America in their crosshairs, specifically, Dr. Levitt, after this 2010 strategic meeting, or the decision they came to? Is America more firmly in their crosshairs now? We, of course, saw that plot in the fall of 2011. What did that mean for this larger shadow war, as you call it, against the West by Iran and Hezbollah?
So this 2011 plot with an Iranian American named Arbab Siar was absolutely critical. You see it kind of fall into the lap of the Quds Force just as it's tasked with coming up with new plots to target Western diplomats. But in the past, we always assessed that Iran, in particular, and the Quds Force and Hezbollah as well, would see it carrying out an attack in the homeland, in the United States, as extremely dangerous for them. Here, we see that the Quds Force decided it wouldn't be too far a stretch to carry out a bombing targeting the Saudi ambassador in a downtown Washington, D.C. restaurant that is known to be frequented by U.S. senators in the middle of the day. And so the Director of National Intelligence has stated publicly in congressional testimony that it's the assessment of the U.S. intelligence community that at least some decision makers within Iran, possibly including the Supreme Leader, is the way he put it, no longer see carrying out an attack within the U.S. as crossing some type of red line in response to the various things they see us as doing. And so it's changed the whole calculus.
So they don't fear the potential blowback as much as they used to, obviously. Why is that? Why
I think they
now?
do. I think they fear the blowback, but the thing for Iran, and the thing for Hezbollah too, as their proxy, is reasonable deniability. They understand our systems. They understand that we're just not going to lash out without having strong evidence. As long as they can do something with reasonable deniability, they feel they have more leeway. I think that the Arbab plot actually backfired on them a little bit. It showed them to be not quite as capable as some people had thought. A lot of their plots have been kind of, keystone cops.
Coming up, more with Dr. Matthew Levin. Stay tuned.
Attention sleep apnea patients. Are you tired of the expense and hassle of getting your CPAP and BiPAP supplies? Are you fed up with dealing with ill-fitting, leaking, or worn-out masks and straps? Are you worried about the effects that unsanitary tubes, cushions, and filters have on your health? If you said yes to any of these questions, Allied Medical Supply Network has the solution to your problems. You could qualify to have your supplies regularly delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. That's right, no more inconvenience, no worn-out masks and straps, no more unsanitary equipment, just restful sleep. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today to determine if you may qualify to receive your fresh, brand-name supplies at little or no cost. Don't delay. Call us now to see if you are eligible to save money on regular delivery of your CPAP and BiPAP supplies. Call 1-800-815-9947. That's 1-800-815-9947. Or go to cpapsupplyhelpline.com.
Announcing an important breakthrough in healthcare that can benefit everyone. If you or anyone you love needs affordable health insurance, regardless of a pre-existing medical condition, call Quick Insurance 123 today and get the immediate relief you deserve. Quick Insurance 123 was created to provide affordable health insurance to all uninsured Americans, with or without pre-existing conditions. This is not a discount card. This is a real insurance program that lets you choose from many affordable health plans, with access to doctors, hospitals, emergency services, and more. So call the number on your screen now and get the health coverage you need just for calling. As a special bonus, we'll send you a free prescription savings card that could save you up to 85% on your prescriptions. That's right, you could save up to 85% on your prescriptions just for calling. Call Quick Insurance 123 to find out how you can get affordable health insurance and receive your free prescription savings card just for calling. Don't wait. Getting a free quote is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Call today.
How does this shadow war ramp up? What are the ramifications for the West? Iran and Hezbollah obviously have some assets in place in the West. What kind of potential blowback are we looking at if those nuclear facilities are struck?
There's no question that if Iran's nuclear facilities are struck, and struck by anyone, Iran will respond, and will respond fiercely. It will probably shoot missiles at some countries and say we have right to self-defense. It will probably have its proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, fire what I believe would probably be a small number of rockets at Israel, because these countries don't want to get dragged, these groups, Hezbollah and Hamas, don't want to get dragged into this, where there is a point of retaliation. You shoot a rocket, I know where I can shoot back. But what they're definitely going to do is asymmetric warfare, terrorism. And we're seeing it already in the early stages now. And
So
I think
embassies, consulates, synagogues.
hard targets, embassies and consulates, soft targets.
Around the world, too.
Around the world, we're seeing it already, from Asia to Africa, Europe. It's all over the place. Now, they have the potential to do that here in the United States as well. The FBI has reported that Hezbollah has carried out pre-operational surveillance of potential targets in the U.S. They say it's usually used to vet new recruits, but then they have that operational planning off the shelf. And this is an area of concern. So is South America, because we do have only a very small number of actually documented cases where terrorists have come across the border from Mexico, for example. But one of them is a very senior Hezbollah operative who we caught and convicted and then deported. But there's a lot of potential risk out there, and that's what U.S. law enforcement and U.S. intelligence are working very, very hard to mitigate.
Yeah. Do you think our intelligence agencies and the Obama administration, do you think they're cognizant of how severe that Iranian presence is becoming in the Western Hemisphere, specifically in South America, places like Venezuela and beyond? It seems like they are establishing somewhat of a forward base in Latin America, the Iranian regime. Do you think our intelligence community and the government are aware of that?
You know, what the good news message here is that on the counterterrorism and intelligence levels, you know, the people we have in government are true professionals. They're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, however they vote. And that's a constant. And they are the best of the best. So I do think that we have a pretty good handle on what's going on in South America, and that's why we are so concerned about what we see. You know, after the 1994 Hezbollah and Iran bombing of the Jewish Community Center, the Amia Center in 1994, there was a tremendous concern about the size and number of Iranian diplomatic outposts in the southern half of the Western Hemisphere. That has grown exponentially in number and in size. And so they have Iran huge embassies in tiny little countries in Central America where they have virtually no business, and there's no way to explain it, and this is very disconcerting. Hezbollah has long had a presence in South America, particularly in the tri-border where Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil meet, but not only. Import-export free trade zones throughout the region, and now increasingly we see them in Venezuela and even increasingly in Mexico. So there's a tremendous amount of activity going on, and there's a tremendous amount of effort on our part to counter their efforts. The good news is that most of that doesn't make it into the newspapers or onto CBN programs, because that means that the good stuff is being done. The bad news is that you and I don't get to know about it and sleep in relative comfort.
Yeah, well, it's good that we have you here sounding the alarm. Dr. Matthew Levitt, thanks so much.
It's always a pleasure.
Up next, what are Palestinians learning in their textbooks, and how is the UN helping them? Don't move.
Today we're on a field trip to discover what inflation is doing to our paper money. In this hand is a $20 bill, and in this hand is a $20 US gold coin. They used to have the same buying power, but how much can they buy today? In this first basket is what my $20 bill buys: milk, bread, peanut butter, and jelly. And here's what one $20 gold coin will buy: 6 baskets full, worth nearly $2,000, almost 100 times more food, simply by owning gold dollars instead of paper dollars. History shows that the gold coins have been the best way to beat the rising cost of living. So class, the moral is that unless you want to live on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the future, you should turn some paper dollars into gold coins now. How and why is explained in a new book, The Great Debasement. Call the number below for a totally free copy. And that's the simple truth.
Help!
If an emergency happened right now, you can have help at the push of a button with Medical Alert.
Remember when I took that fall, Mary?
Oh, yes, that was terrible.
Yes, it was. Help! And I thought, what if you hadn't been there? I ordered my Medical Alert the next day.
I can't describe how safe I feel now with my Medical Alert. You didn't know I was wearing it, did you?
Medical Alert is easy to install, waterproof, and covers you inside your home and out.
It helps me feel safe from fires, break-ins.
And of course, a Medical Alert. And if you don't have a home phone, don't worry. They have that covered.
There's always help at the push of a button. Don't wait till you need it.
Get Medical Alert for less than $1 a day. There are no long-term contracts. Order now and get your second button free. Call for your free brochure.
For your free Medical Alert system with second button free, call 800-575-8507.
And welcome back. Well, David Bedin is the president of the Center for Near East Policy Research in Jerusalem. His organization recently produced a crucially important 30-minute documentary called Inside the UNRWA Classroom. Now, the film portrays the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, or UNRWA, as an organization dedicated to inciting Palestinian extremism. That's right, the UN, funded in large part by American taxpayers. And as David's film documents, this is all happening through the Palestinian educational curriculum, schools, and refugee camps. Take a look.
The textbooks of the Palestinian Authority, the new textbooks, which are used by UNRWA. And by the way, UNRWA says we have to use the textbooks of the host entity. No, they don't. They choose to. The Palestinian Authority textbooks, the new textbooks, are rife with a language of war. We've taken 4 different translators, 2 Arab, 2 Jewish, all of whom know Arabic on the PhD level, to look at the textbooks. And it's amazing what's there. Textbooks which teach children, pupils, to emulate those who murder Jews. Textbooks which teach pupils to liberate all of Palestine. Textbooks which teach children to venerate anyone who supports what they call the right of return, which is no right at all, but it's made up as they go along. Now, people don't believe it. You know, there's a certain syndrome, certainly in our Jewish people, to want to deny what's going on. That's why we're, in a sense, forced by Jewish law to have Passover. So we sit down at the Seder table and we hear, every generation, a nation comes to kill you. Well, this is what, unfortunately, we have to have that once a year. We make it into a joyous occasion, but it's serious stuff. So we try to deny it, but that's why this is not out so fast, because it's really unbelievable. And when we ask scholars of Nazi Germany, did they have books like this? Well, they had books like, which I interviewed when I was a high school kid in Philadelphia, William Shirer, who wrote The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And he would always emphasize that education came before concentration camps. But in that education, there was no explicit call for the admiration of those who murdered Jews. It was implicit, not explicit. This is explicit. And everyone and his brother and sister tried to deny it because they wanted to have the peace process go ahead and have everything nice. The reason why it's important to know this, that education is the basis of everything. And too many people say, no, we'll make political agreements. However, when our agency films in the UNRWA facilities, which are under the aegis of the Palestinian Authority, and we show this to be happening. We actually show the children in Nazi-like salutes, and we show the children being inculcated with the idea that their homes are not in Judea, Samaria, Gaza, but their homes are, you've noticed that they've been bombing Beersheba, Ashkelon, Ashdod, the maps that we have. We show that Ashdod, Ashkelon, Beersheba are the places that they call illegal settlements. Let's give some facts here. Our agency met with, on 4 occasions, the Palestinian Minister of Education, who made it clear that there's a joint curriculum between the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, and UNRWA. The same books are learned. And the other area that we're currently studying is the Palestinian Armed Forces, which include Hamas. The American government is financing them to finance Hamas, but they already include Hamas. On December 20th, 1995, almost 18 years ago, Fatah and Hamas signed a joint working agreement. And there's been various stages. There's something called the Mecca Accord. It's gone back and forth. But basically, it's a unified front with, again, a lot of friction because there's different versions. But what we have also, and this I learned from the papal delegate in Jerusalem, that the Palestinian Authority adopted an Islamic constitution based on the Sharia law, not the Sharia law in Morocco and Tunisia, which accept other religions, not the Sharia law in Iran, which accept other religious minorities, but the Sharia law in Saudi Arabia, where there is no juridical status for anyone but Islam. And that has been adopted by the Palestinian Authority which some people think is secular.
Coming up, some final thoughts from David Badin. Stay tuned.
When you're driving along and your cell phone rings, do your eyes instantly go off the road? Then you need to get a grip. Hi, David Jones here with the new GripGo, the most versatile hands-free mount that will instantly grip any phone for safe driving. Just attach the suction cup to your windshield or dash, and GripGo grabs your phone ultra fast. Then it peels right off. And don't worry, there's no sticky residue left behind. The 360-degree pivoting mount allows you to always get the perfect viewing angle. It's even strong enough to grab and hold this expensive smartphone out the window. Yet it comes right off with ease. That's the advantage of GripGo. You can get the amazing GripGo with dashboard mount for only $14.95. We'll send you a second kit free. Just pay separate processing and handling. Get 2 complete GripGo systems for just $14.95.
To order GripGo for $14.95 plus processing and handling, call 1-800-709-5259 or order online at getgripgo.com.
Jim is 38, mortgage, married, 3 great kids. He wants to protect his family with a $500,000 term life insurance policy. What do you think it'll cost him? $100 a month? 60? 40? Actually, none of the above. Jim can get a $500,000 policy from a highly rated insurer for under $19 a month. His secret? SelectQuote. SelectQuote is impartial. They'll comparison shop the pick of insurance companies like these to give you a choice of your best prices. SelectQuote has great savings on term life for women, too. Jim's wife, Deidre, can get a $500,000 policy for under $16 a month. SelectQuote has helped make term life insurance affordable for hundreds of thousands of people since 1985. How about you? Just call this number or go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
And welcome back. So we've established that the Palestinian educational curriculum is teaching hatred of Jews, and the UN, through UNRWA, is supporting it. So what can we do about it? Here's some final thoughts from David Badin.
The donor countries to the Palestinian Authority and to UNRWA can assert themselves. The United States of America contributes 30% of the budget of UNRWA. I'm not saying to cut budgets to a refugee agency. That's like taking candy away from a baby. You can't do that. What you can do is condition funding. You want funding? No more promotion of the right of return. No more promotion of war with Israel. No more promotion of war in the Middle East. Simple, clear terms.
A big thanks to David Badin for his great work. Again, the film is called Inside the UNRWA Classroom. You can find out more at the Center for Near East Research Policy's website. That's IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Until next time, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace. Remember to check out the Stakelbeck on Terror blog at cbnnews.com 24/7 for the latest on these and other stories.